good evening, good afternoon, or even good morning. I realize we are speaking to many people from many different parts of the world. My name is Jim Dixon. I'm an optometrist in the United Kingdom, and I specialize in contact lenses, and I've been fitting contact lenses for the last 35 years or so. I'm employed by Mark Enevi in the United Kingdom as Head of Professional Affairs. So on behalf of Spectrum International and Mark Enevi, I welcome you to this webinar about myopia management and also our Mylo product. Spectrum International are authorized distributors of Mark Enevi products. Mark Enevi themselves are part of the Euclid Vision Group, who specialize in custom-made contact lenses of different types, ortho-K, scleral, etc. And recently, we purchased Medmont, who manufactures topographers and other ophthalmic instruments. Tonight's agenda, we'll have as I appreciate people come from many different levels of experience on something like this. We'll have a brief myopia update and overview. I will also look at Mylo and Mylo for astigmatism, and also share the latest efficacy study as well as fitting guidelines. If you have any questions, please use the Q&A function. I've opened the chat function so you can post messages there. And at the end of the session, this should probably take 35-40 minutes maximum, and we should have time to look at any of the questions as well. Now, there's been a massive increase in awareness of the rise and impact of myopia over the last 2 or 3 years. We have many new products from many parts of the industry. We have access to new studies and much more educational resources than we've ever had before. Last year, I attended a lecture by Professor Ian Flitcroft, who's based in Dublin in Ireland, and he is an expert on myopia. He shared in his lecture that while there has been a shift from an era of simply correcting myopia to now viewing myopia as a modifiable risk factor, there had been limited change as to what was actually happening in optometry practices, with single vision lenses, be that spectacle or contact lenses, still the most common way of addressing myopia. Turning to what is the minimum standard of care for a myopic child, Professor Flitcroft presented the analogy of a staircase, with the bottom step representing not correcting myopia, and while the top step involves implementing a comprehensive monitoring and management plan. Flitcroft shared that some early adopters have raced to the top step, but this should not discourage those who are new to myopia management. Wherever you are, you must move forward, step by step, and you will get there, he said. So hopefully this evening's webinar will help you advance wherever you are on that journey to the next step. Following on from this, it leads me to this statement from the late Professor Brian Holden, who was very much a pioneer of myopia management, and his passing was a great loss to the profession. But I think his statement succinctly captures where we are with the current status of myopia management. We don't know everything about myopia, but we know too much to do nothing at all. As we know, myopia can be axial, where the eye is larger than normal, or refractive, where the eye is more powerful than usual. Axial myopia is usually the one that progresses, while refractive myopia can remain stable throughout life. We can see here the International Myopia Institute's definition of low, high, and pre-myopia. To be able to identify young children at risk of becoming myopic is a great advantage to us. It means we can be having the discussion with the parent before the myopia has developed and help prepare them for the treatment that we will offer. So why does axial length matter to us? Axial length is more sensitive than refraction in detecting changes related to myopia progression. It is also closely linked to the risk of eye diseases associated with myopia. And research studies on myopia control treatments often use axial length as a primary measurement to assess efficacy. It's almost the axial length is the baseline for any clinical study. When it comes to our clinical practice, and I'm based in the UK, so I speak from a slightly biased position there. Certainly in the UK, measuring axial length is not a standard requirement in a routine clinical examination. But saying that, axial length is becoming more and more common. Now, this slide demonstrates normal axial length growth. And I recommend the website Myopia Profile. I'll just click on the link there. So Myopia Profile, where you can learn more about normal axial length progression. So in summary, when evaluating myopia and its management, axial length plays a crucial role in understanding progression and assessing treatment effectiveness. It's like the gold standard ruler for measuring myopia-related changes in the eye. Now, the Brian Holden Vision Institute, their studies estimate that myopia will affect 5 billion people worldwide by 2050. So that will mean a prevalence of 50% of the world's population when it is currently around 34%. Another added problem is that not only is myopia increasing, but the amount of high myopes will rise by up to 10% by 2050. Currently, the amount of elderly myopes is low, but in a few years, the amount of myopes and high myopes is going to be huge. This will increase the incidence of them suffering potentially sight-threatening complications, with the resulting impact not only on the individual themselves, but increased socio-economic problems associated to myopia, and of course its public health burden. Now, I apologise, I don't have data for every country represented here on this webinar, but if we use Europe as an example, we can see that the estimated prevalence values currently for myopia are 18% for Eastern Europe, 21% for Central, and 22% for Western Europe. These values will elevate to 50, 54, and 56% respectively over the next 20 to 30 years. Now, percentages may not clearly convey the impact, but the really worrying possibility is that 1 out of 2 people on the planet will be myopic by 2050. We can also speak in terms of the absolute number of people, and the data becomes even more hard-hitting. In 2010, roughly 227 million people were myopic in Europe, and with the growth that's projected, we'll be looking by 2050 at 353 million people being myopic. So why does myopia appear, and more importantly, progress? At birth, the length of the eye does not match its focal length. It needs to grow. And that process to ensure their equivalence is called emmetropization. And this process, when it fails, leaves a refractive error, myopia. Now, there is some individual characteristics, cultural and lifestyle, and certainly genetic influence, and we'll have a brief look at that as well. And some of these cultural factors are influencing or fueling the onset of the progression of myopia to alarming levels. But later in life, the eye uses peripheral defocus to achieve the optimal refractive error by altering its growth. However, when we use a traditional minus spectacle lens or contact lens to correct myopia, the image shell it produces is focused in the central retina. However, the peripheral part is behind it, causing hyperopic peripheral defocus. Evidence-based approaches to address risk factors and control myopia, such as increased time outdoors and possibly decreased near work duration, should be recommended. Ensuring that children spend 2 hours per day outside during daylight hours, particularly before they are attending school and the early primary school years, is justified by the evidence that's already available. Limiting homework after school at these ages is also recommended. Now, increased time outdoors is effective in preventing the onset of myopia, as well as slowing the myopic shift. But paradoxically, outdoor time was not effective in slowing progression in eyes that were already myopic. Other postulated mechanisms require further investigation, although a role for vitamin D has been excluded. But you can see on the screen there that there is something that we cannot modify. There's more myopia in girls. There's a higher prevalence in East and Southeast Asia. And certainly if you have myopic parents, if you have 2 myopic parents, you are 6 times more likely to be a myope. If you have 1 myopic parent, you're 3 times more likely to be a myope. There's other factors that need more investigation. How our circadian rhythms, how our sleep pattern affects it, level of activity, diet, smoking, the type of environment that you live and grow up in. So that's, I think we can refer back to the late Professor Brian Holden and say that we know a lot about myopia, but we don't yet know everything. So in light of this developing scenario of myopic growth, why is it important to address this upward myopic trend? And purely and simply because myopia increases the risk of suffering ocular complications, regardless of the level of myopia in the patient. So as you can see on the table there, the most severe complications that a myope are facing is cataracts, glaucoma, retinal detachments, and myopic maculopathy. All of these complications have a potentially blinding effect. Now, as eye care professionals and optometrists and ophthalmologists, we're all aware of the risk of blindness which glaucoma, retinal detachment, and myopic maculopathy can provoke, but we may not think there's such a great risk with cataracts. And this may be true in the industrialized world, where access to cataract surgery is widespread and easy. However, cataracts continue to be one of the leading causes of blindness worldwide. Besides those on the screen, the myopic maculopathy, detachment, cataract, glaucoma, etc., there's other complications that we can mention: retinoschisis, posterior staphyloma, lattice degeneration, and posterior vitreous detachment. We can also help our patients by encouraging behavior changes. In the blue box on the screen there, there's some recommended behavioral changes. Last week I was traveling and I was in an airport and I saw a small child in a pram, probably less than 2 years old, who was looking at an iPad-style tablet for over an hour. Now, the use of tablets and phones to make a child behave is possibly okay in small amounts, but for long periods, it looks like a bad habit. So some of the things that we can recommend is spending time outdoors, taking regular breaks from near work, limiting near tasks after school, that's homework, and time on phones and tablets to a maximum of 2 hours per day, and increasing the exposure to natural lighting. So in conclusion, for this first part of the webinar, where we've looked at myopia and its health burden and the impact, there's one key message that if you take away one thing from tonight's webinar, is that every diopter counts. If we can reduce the rate of progression by 1 diopter, we will make a dramatic improvement to the eye health of our patients for years and years to come. Now, fortunately, when it comes to myopia management, there is many options in the practitioner's, if you like, toolkit. And many have been under investigation for some time, and there's continuously new products coming to market, new studies being developed, and also existing studies being, if you like, topped up because of further data. And it's worth to look at just as a broad overview of some of the options that are available. There isn't one strategy that fits every single child. And I think this is why it's important to have as many options as possible to keep aware of new launches from different manufacturers, as well as supplementing that with the advice on behavioral changes. So let's look at these other strategies. Bifocal and multifocal spectacles. Now, there's been a lot done around this type of specs. There's many new spectacle lenses on the market, and they have very consistent rates of slowing myopia progression. Orthokeratology, or ortho-K, or even night lenses, as they're sometimes called. So these are worn temporarily overnight, and they reshape the cornea, and they're very effective. But the limitation is that we can't correct every correction. We also know that pharmaceutical agents such as atropine that proves to be effective, and there's studies worldwide going on the impact of atropine. And there is a sort of a growing body of evidence that atropine is a very effective way of controlling myopia. Prior to the launch of some of the most newest contact lenses, many practitioners used center distance multifocal contact lenses off-label. When we say off-label, we mean that where we have a lens that is designed for, say, presbyopia, but it's been used for myopic management. There's no concrete evidence that this was working, because there was no clinical trials. But anecdotally and certainly retrospective studies show that basically it's a reasonable concept, but there should be less need as we go forward to be using contact lenses that are off-label. And that brings us to on-label. This is where the Mark Enyvie Mylo lens, it's a lens that is licensed for myopia management because there is clinical proof that it works. And say I will focus on the Mylo product for the remaining part of tonight's webinar. Forgot to mention, if you require more information on the different types of myopia treatment, there's a good link there to the review of myopiamanagement.com/myopia treatments, how to choose and when to use. Lots of information out there to tell us what products we can use. But I think bearing in mind that not one single product is the answer for everyone. So let's look at the Mark Enyvie Mylo. It's a Mark Enyvie product, but the design is licensed to the Brian Holden Vision Institute in Australia. And the design of their lens creates a deliberate manipulation of higher order aberrations to create an extended depth of focus effect. What it does is it causes the image quality behind the retina to degrade, which acts as a stop signal for the eye to grow. So if you remember the earlier slides when I spoke about how a single vision lens in its simplest form was focusing behind the retina, which acts as a stimulus for the eye to grow, this technology degrades that image on the periphery, signaling the eye to stop growing. Its design could be described as aperiodic and non-monotonic. What we mean by that is that the style of the lens or the design of the lens doesn't follow a regular pattern. If you take some lenses, they have a very distinct zones of distance and near, whereas in the Mark Henevy, Brian Holden Vision Institute extended depth of focus lens, there's multiple zones of power over the whole of the optic zone of the lens. So I say it doesn't follow a regular pattern, and its design gives us an extended depth of focus. It's also used in the Mark Henevy extended depth of focus lens for presbyopia, which comes in 3 addition powers. One of the advantages of the extended depth of focus is that it gives us a very strong result to remove ghosting, that annoying image which you may see around artificial lights when you wear a multifocal lens, lack of halos. Because it's a silicon hydrogel lens, we can encourage our wearers to wear it many hours, and I will review this towards the end. The design of the lens, as I mentioned, it has the power profile spread unequally over the surface of the lens, means it's fairly it's not impacted by being slightly off center, and also it is very suitable for people with varying pupil sizes, from kids who have small pupils to kids who have larger pupils. Now, just run through the parameters. It's a silicon hydrogel, has a 75% water content, it has a class 1 UV filter and a blue handling tint. What makes the Mark Henevy Milo product different from pretty much everything else that's out there when it comes to an on-label, clinically proven myopia management product is its wide range of base curves. Each lens is made to order. It's a monthly disposable designed for daily wear, and the base curves range from 7.1 to 9.8 in 0.3 steps. The diameter's 13.5 to 15.5, so catering for that smaller aperture, that smaller eye. And the spherical power starts at -0.25 through to -15 in 0.25 steps. So again, no compromise. Some manufacturers, when you get to a -6, start to go up in 0.50 zones, 0.50 power progressions. It also comes in the toric version now. And the toric version comes in a wide range of cylinders from 0.75 to 8, again in 0.25 steps, and in 1 degree axis steps. That's, for me, is very significant, because as an optician, I wouldn't accept spectacle lenses with a high cylinder, high astigmatism correction being 4 or 5 degrees off on the axis, and I don't want to give my patients that compromise in their contact lenses as well. Now, for any product to be licensed as a myopia management product and to receive its, certainly in the European Union, for it to be approved, it has to undergo some clinical proof. So in December of last year, in the American Journal of Ophthalmology, a 2-year study was published after being peer-reviewed. If you're interested in the full study, I will shortly show as an outcome of the study. But if you're interested in reading the whole study, if you go on to the American Journal of Ophthalmology, go to December 2023. You do not need an account. You do not have to pay, because it's open access. It's a free download, a free PDF, and you can read the whole study and see the outcome. So this study was a longitudinal prospective study looking at the extended depth of focus, the Milo lens. There was 90 children chosen. Previous studies done by the Brian Holden Vision Institute were done in China. So this one was done in Europe. So the children were of Caucasian ethnicity, and they were between 6 and 13 years old. 45 children were assigned to the control group wearing single vision spectacle lenses, and 45 children were assigned to the experimental group of Milo. The results, very strong results over 2 years, showing the axial length. So it's on the top of the screen there, at the top of the right section of the screen. So the axial length change in millimeters over the 2-year control group was a reduction of 44%. And also in the same group, the children who were using the Milo contact lenses had a 46% reduction in myopia compared to the control group who were wearing spectacles. That gave us a care value of 0.29. The care value is the cumulative absolute reduction in axial elongation value, and it's a parameter used to measure the effectiveness of a myopia management intervention. I'll just leave that on the screen for a moment so you can see it in for a little bit longer. We also had studies commissioned on how the lens behaved, because one of the key things for any myopia management product to be successful is the compliance of the child. If the child has issues with comfort or issues with vision, then it's unlikely that they are going to wear the lens for the required amount of hours to have the impact. As you can see along the bottom of the graph there, when it comes to handling, comfort, clarity of vision, stability of vision, and confidence and satisfaction to continue, the lens averaged a score out of 10 of greater than 9. I'm pleased to say that this study has now, we now have advanced information of after 3 years, and the results are very, very similar, though the handling for insertion and removal has scored higher, but we possibly can expect that as the children start to wear the lenses for longer and become much more competent in the handling. There was no dropouts in that group of 45 children. The optometrist who was doing the study for his doctorate also operated in association with an ophthalmologist, and she looked at the corneas of every child on a regular basis and saw nothing of any significance that should suggest the child should discontinue. So we can say with confidence that it showed a clinically significant slower myopia progression rate compared to those children wearing spectacle lenses. The lens was safe to wear with no dropouts or any interruptions, and that the extended depth of focus design provides good subjective visual acuity at all distances. Now, when it comes to ordering Mark Eneby lenses, I've put together some slides just to give you an insight. I appreciate that you are ordering lenses through Spectrum International, but just to give you an insight into some measurements that will make first-time fit success rate as high as possible. This can be applied to all Mark Eneby monthly lenses, not just for the Milo. So if you're using the Saphir RX or the gentle lenses for presbyopia and astigmatic presbyopia, then the same information applies. So there's three basic parts of three simple requirements we have. One is the horizontal visible iris diameter. Now, in soft lenses, that's fallen out of fashion somewhat, because most soft lens manufacturers do not give you any choice when it comes to the diameter of the lens. They have decided the best parameters that are going to fit the maximum amount of people. But we know that not everyone is average, and there's a study from a professor in Holland that shows that 68% of people have an average diameter and average shaped cornea, but that leaves 32% who don't fit into that average group. So to measure the horizontal visible iris diameter allows us, in conjunction with the keratometry, to calculate the SAG. Now the SAG is for us is the basis for our lens fit, whereas off-the-shelf lenses will just come in one fit, maybe 2 curves if you're lucky, and 1 diameter. And finally, the other thing we need is the up-to-date prescription, the refraction. To measure the horizontal visible iris diameter, you do not need a topographer, though if you have one, excellent. But you can also do it with a ruler. You can use a pupillary distance ruler or a ruler like this, which is designed to easily demonstrate the HVID. If we can get the HVID as accurate as possible, then it will help determine the parameters of the lens and ensure success of that final fit. If you have topography, then one of the other things we can have with a topographer is also the eccentricity. That's the amount of flattening towards the edge of the cornea. But from the main bits of information, as well as the HVID, are the K readings, the keratometry readings, and also the axis that they follow. The other thing we have to consider is back vertex distance, because if we have a spectacle lens which is above ±4, then we have to take into account the back vertex distance for a contact lens. And we shouldn't forget that also applies to the toric element, the cylinder element. If a patient has a -10 and a -3 cylinder, then effectively in one of the meridians it's going to be -13. So we still have to make that adjustment for the cylinder as well. So we have an example there that the spectacle correction is -6, -375. And when we adjust the sphere, that comes down to a -550. The cylinder effectively is an 875. And our adjusted result for that, when it comes to back vertex distance, is a -550, -325 at the original axis. So it's just one of the watchouts that many practitioners forget to take into account the full power of the astigmatism in that particular meridian. And then you can calculate it using the fitting calculator. There's a Mark Enyvie website, markenyvie.com, where you can get further information, but also the colleagues at Spectrum International will be able to help you as well. When it comes to the HVID, we normally recommend adding 3 millimeters to the HVID to come up with the diameter of the lens. If you're fitting a multifocal, and obviously we're talking primarily about myopia management and the Milo product tonight, but if you were fitting a multifocal, a simple tip is to apply the maximum plus power for distance and the minimum plus power for near. That will help the patient. So if you can push the plus in the distance and go with the lowest add that will give them enough vision to do most things, then the chances of a successful outcome are greatly increased. Now, one of the things about myopia management is that we have limited options currently for astigmatism. You can fit with Ortho K, and that will correct up to maybe 175, 2 diopters of astigmatism. But when it comes to the Milo, we have a wide range of powers in the astigmatism. And that's really important because we know that 1/3 of potential contact lens wearers would benefit from an astigmatic correction. And I also go back to the point of compliance. If a child has a small degree of astigmatism, let's say 1 diopter of astigmatism, and we don't correct it, and we fit them with a contact lens in a spherical form with a non-astigmatism correction, then that child is not going to see well. And that will then possibly limit their compliance and ultimately the success of the myopia management treatment. Now, when we launched the toric, there's no difference in the technology of the design. It's still the Brian Holden Vision Institute extended depth of focus design, but we ran a study across some of our European colleagues where we looked at how the Milo toric performed in this new geometry, primarily to assess if we needed to make any adjustment to the fitting guide or make any changes to how the lens was instructed to be used. So there was 44 patients from 6 different countries, and we looked at how the lens behaved in its toric form. And well, this is a very busy slide with lots of information. The area that I want to primarily focus on is exchanges, and considering we would all regard a toric, an astigmatic correction is more complicated than a spherical, we can pleased to say that 2 out of 3 patients, so 66% of patients, were fitted from the first pair of lenses. So the trial lenses, 66% of them were fine and needed no adjustment. 95% of fittings were finished with 1 lens being exchanged, and only 4.5% of patients needed a second lens exchange. This was presented to the BCLA, that's the British Contact Lens Association, last summer, and also at the you see at the top of the screen there at the NCC in Holland. That was presented earlier this year. So the conclusion from that is that it provides good performance, good vision, and therefore the Milo Toric we can recommend as an appropriate solution for patients with astigmatism and whom myopia is progressing. So just looking from a time perspective, I see there's four comments in the chat function, so hopefully we'll manage to get to them and answer them for you. Consider the Milo product when there is astigmatism of 0.75 or more. Let's not mask astigmatism by using a lens to hide the astigmatism, but actually try and correct it fully to ensure compliance. Using a silicon hydrogel lens gives us a greater oxygen transmissibility, and again we can encourage our child to wear the lens as many hours as possible. Our recommendation is a minimum 6 days per week, 10 hours per day, but more if you're happy and the child is happy. Also consider Milo when you find that the child has either a very flat, steep, small or large cornea, because it's made to order rather than being something that's mass produced. And also if a child is not having success because of issues with halos and glare, the Milo extended depth of focus design performs very, very well, and that's clinically proven for that. I'm very proud to say that in the UK, where I'm based, the Milo Toric won Contact Lens Award at the Optician Awards in 2023 because it was something that was so unique to the market. Finally, just as a recap, consider the Milo as an on-label for myopia management. Remember, it's a silicon hydrogel, so we can wear it as much as you recommend. We certainly recommend a minimum of 10 hours, 6 days per week or more. And also, you have the widest range of parameters to address the individual need of each patient, including those with astigmatism. So I thank you from me on behalf of Mark Enevi, but also from Spectrum International, who is the supplier to most of the countries represented here tonight. So I will just stop sharing. You'll see me in a much larger format, and we'll have a look at some of the questions in the chat. If you have if you have no questions or and want to finish, then please don't wait any longer. I appreciate in some countries that it's 2 or 3 hours ahead of Central European time. So can we record, please? Yes, we are recording, and it will go to Spectrum, who will distribute the recording. And also one of the other questions: can we have the link for the Milo study or a PDF file? Well, I've covered that. So again, just in case it was missed, because I realize some people joined a little bit late. If you go to in fact, let me just share that information again on the screen, because I think it's very important that we have access to that study. So if we just share the screen again, and I'll go back to a lot of clicking until we get back there, but let me get to the information so that if you take a photograph or a screenshot, you'll see. So say it was a 2-year myopia study on the management and efficacy of Milo extended depth of focus lenses in Caucasian children. It was published in the American Journal of Ophthalmology in December of 2023, and it's available as a free download. So another question was, what was the main reasons for the exchange in the toric lenses? And you've answered it for me. Is it the axis? Absolutely. It was the patients who required a change. It was just a small change in the axis. Or a very small adjustment in the power, minus 0.25, but nothing greater than 0.050. But it's a very good point, Fadi. So thank you for raising that. But but from us, we had confidence that the lens didn't need to be, that our fitting instructions didn't need to change when we added the toric component. So I think that's everything in the questions. I'll just double refresh that. So. Yeah, so thank you very much for your time this evening. I think there's that one more question come up. Just another question being typed, so give me a moment. But again, thank you all on behalf of Spectrum International and also on behalf of Mark Enyvi for taking the time. I appreciate wherever you are. It's the evening. Milo lenses are not for online sale. No, Milo. Any myopia management lens has to be supplied, in my opinion, under the supervision of an optometrist or ophthalmologist. So we do not sell online. I know that Spectrum International do not sell online. Occasionally, you may come across something very obscure where someone has bought some lenses and is trying to resell them, but generally for myopia management and for custom-made lenses, there is no advantage to people purchasing them or trying to purchase via an online supplier, and there's no reason for people there's no advantage for them to. They're not going to make lots of money by ordering a lens that comes in over hundreds of thousands of parameters to sell for online. So I think Felipe there very much encapsulates that we don't promote or support online sales, and actually we want to help practitioners and growing confidence in fitting our lenses, and hence we bring you this type of webinar. So if there's no more questions, I will wish you a good evening wherever you are, or a good day wherever you are. And thank you once again for taking the time to join us on tonight's webinar. And I look forward to bringing you more from Mark Enyvi and Spectrum International on custom lenses in the future.